There we go. So now we should be recording. All right. So today's webinar really is an overview to the library databases that we offer. And we're going to be covering a few different aspects of this. I wanted to make sure that faculty really had sort of a grounding in what our databases offer, but also how to make those more connected to your classes, both in how you find content for teaching and having a greater familiarity for yourself. But in also, sort of understanding what the issues are around, pieces like copyright and licensing, and how to really integrate that into your Canvas course site. We'll also get into sort of determining what kind of content works best for your teaching context. So we'll talk a bit about things like accessibility and some of the other pieces, what I call value-added pieces that come along with some of these databases. So what I'd like you to do is just take a moment, because everybody's coming from different schools and different areas within the university, and please write down maybe one or two goals that you have for this webinar. And so as I'm working through the content, you can be thinking about how I'm either answering your questions or I'm not, or thinking about how you need to email me on the flip side of the webinar so that we can come back around and get your questions and needs answered. And that could be tomorrow, or that could be next week, or that could be August 1st, whenever it works for you. But I think that it's good to sort of think about where you're coming from with your teaching and what you're looking for in terms of content. So I'm giving you just a little bit of dead space here. So the next thing I'll say is to make sure that you ask questions, and you can do that by putting questions in the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to place them in chat. I'll be watching it. And as we get them, I'll try and answer it as we go along. But also feel free to turn your volume back on, unmute yourself, and ask questions as well. So particularly if I'm going really fast and I miss your question, please do that. And then I'm going to open the chat right now. Let's see, where are you, chat? I feel like I get control of what I'm doing. And then with Zoom, and then I lose it again. So I don't know if everybody feels like that, but I think it's easy to do. So what I'm doing now is actually adding this PowerPoint to your chat, so you can grab the PowerPoint so that you'll have all the links and everything that you need. You can also, of course, take notes, print it out, do whatever you need to do, but you'll have the actual PowerPoint sitting there in the chat for you in just a moment. Okay, and it says it was sent successfully, so you should have that available to you. So where does it all come from? We were talking about this a little bit before we got started. The library actually has access to about 200 databases of what's called licensed content. And, licensed content really is a variety of types of content. This can range from, of course, books, ebooks, or digitized books, journal articles, newspaper articles, images, films, documentaries, music, audio files, and even classes that like we see in LinkedIn and other places. And these are made available to the campus community. The library content providers that we work with are all pretty much from private companies. So that means that these are content providers that have developed their own platforms, their own technologies, and so everything looks different. And the content, while it's specific to its audiences, so oftentimes, the platforms are developed around whether they're working with graduates or undergraduates, higher ed versus K-12, as well as different disciplinary areas and media types. We sometimes see that content is, our primary sources, so they are the ones that only the ones that have the rights to certain content. Well, we may see content replicated. We often see this with journals and ebooks, for instance, across a couple of different vendors. But the problem is it winds up making the experience really different. And it can be really confusing to navigate all of this and to really get in and find the content you want. I find that just like kind of in the olden days where many of us were, had sort of our favorite peer-reviewed scholarly journals and our trade publications that were the first places we went to, oftentimes faculty have their favorite databases too. And they go in and really check out what the new content is, and they have certain places that they feel really comfortable and like to navigate. As I mentioned before, some content is provided to us through the state, through NC Live, but most of all the other content is licensed through the library. And I can tell you I spend an awful lot of time dealing with licenses, copyright, purchase orders, and all of those pieces to ensure that we have access. The other piece of content that faculty should always consider is what's called open content or open access. And that's placed online in, I say free with quotes around it, because is it really free? But typically this is accessible to us in an open space, and we would want to look and see what the restrictions are around that use when we go there. So again, I spoke a bit about different platforms. And this means, of course, that content can really feel different according to where you're going and what kind of content you're looking at. And it makes it hard to navigate. All of our content is available through the IP network. So what that really means is that you would use your UNCSA username and password to log into it. And I see that John John Ferry has a note up here saying that he has difficulty accessing databases such as JSTOR off campus. So John, we would want to, dig in a little bit on that. If you have problems accessing it, it could be that either your account is not set up properly through IT. That's one way. Another thing we see sometimes too is that if people have not cleaned their browser caches in a while, things can get hung up on your end. So I usually suggest first that someone tries a different browser to see if that works, and if not, then we'll go talk with Tamar.
Yeah, my issue is usually one of connectivity. So so it could be exactly what you say, but sometimes when we log in to do stuff through the library, it asks for, as you suggest, your username and kind of email password. But I also have difficulty renewing books because it asks me for a different set of criteria. It asks for the
Right.
EasyArc login, right? So that's really, just knowing how to access this would be a great help to me. So that's my main
Great.
thing.
Well, let's definitely, you and I, circle back around and make sure we fix some of these access issues for you after this. And anybody else that might be having access issues, please let me know. Because the other piece of this too is that we do see them pop up sometimes with students. And we want to make sure, particularly as many of us move increasingly online for fall, that our students have as clean an experience as possible. So we don't want to have confusing navigation. We want everything to work really well for them. And that's where I would advocate that faculty really stay in communication with us in the library. So if you even have one problem or one issue from a student, we want to hear it. Because oftentimes with these problems, I think there might be one student that's having an issue, and it's actually really 10 students. So I'd rather hear from you sooner than later if there are any kinds of tech problems with library content. So again, this really goes through IP. So what it means is that, campuses are assigned a certain amount of IP range or these kinds of numbers. We provide those numbers back out to the vendors, and they authenticate as if we're sitting on campus. But we do use something called a proxy, and that allows you to be off campus. and authenticate in. Now, if you happen to be off campus at home and using the VPN, it should act as if you're sitting on campus, so you should be able to go right into those resources. But if you are not using VPN, then you would need to make sure that anything you're clicking on or anything that you link to in Canvas has a proxy prefix. And typically, and we're gonna talk more about this in a few moments, but a URL link should have this verbiage here. So that proxy123nclive.org. If you see that in a link that you're using or placing on Canvas, you'll know that the proxy is there, and therefore your students will be directed, like all of us, down what I call the yellow brick road, and we can click on our account or log in there. Some content that you'll come to is downloadable. So you'll see, directives letting you know that you can download PDFs, but other content is linkable, or both. So when we look at JSTOR in a few moments, we'll see that we can either give a static URL link or we can download the PDF. When you're dealing with Canvas and you're making things accessible to students, it is always much better to give them the link. The reason being is that it turns into a copyright issue if you're downloading lots and lots of content from JSTOR and putting that through Canvas. It's always better to have the student go to JSTOR and have them download the content. So that's just one tip. Sorry, I went the wrong way. So I spoke a little bit a while ago about open access. Again, this is a major cache of content that's out there. Some of the top databases that are openly accessible in different content areas, we do link to from our library pages, even though they are openly accessible. Open access refers to a movement where materials in the public domain, so that's anything before 1926, or are rights cleared or the rights are held by the content provider, are placed freely online for use. So there are major caches of open access databases out there. I love DPLA, which is the Digital Public Library of America. That's a fun place to go. Europeana is another one, so that's the EU's version of DPLA, and those are aggregates for open content. But with any open content, you just want to make sure that you are checking on those use restrictions before you use it. So most everything is pretty safe in the Canvas environment because we know that's behind firewalls. But if you are doing any blogging or using WordPress or anything like that, and you're grabbing open content, make sure that you check the restrictions before you just, put that up there. A couple of really great examples of open content that get used by our faculty and students all the time are, of course, IMSLP is a huge one with our School of Music students. Jerome Robbins Dance Division from the New York Public Library has some incredible collections. And then one of my favorites, of course, is the Metropolitan Museum of Art's ebook collections, where many of their publications were actually put online, fully online and digitized. Okay, Clifton, we'll look at yours in just a minute. I promise, yeah. Okay, so additionally, UNCSA, of course, we have our own archives. So we have our own content that we're also making available. And of course, that's accessible to you to use in classes. We will be opening that up. We luckily have a new tool coming online where we will be able to not only put openly accessible content out, but also digitize and lock down our archival content to the campus community. So know that coming up over time, we'll really be broadening our scope of digitized content from our university archives. This is an example of the Frederick Melton photograph collection that's at MYPL. It's a really wonderful one, but we can see that we have, it's a photo documentary photo collection from I believe it's the New York City Ballet. So these are the kinds of pieces of content that one can expect to find in these collections. Typically, these are made available through museums, as well as libraries, archives, and other what we call GLAM institutions. So galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. GLAM. That's one of my favorite acronyms out there because every time I see it, I think of David Bowie. So that makes me really happy. Okay, so how do we find what we're looking for in the context of UNCSA Library? So I've thrown a lot at you kind of about databases, and I'm sure you're ready for a nap now because it's not horribly interesting, but we can dig in now and take a look at what we have available. So I'm going to go out to a live demonstration. I'm going to switch my screen over to Safari so that we can do, let me see, I need to do a new share. Here we go. And it worked. Here we are. So I always start at the library homepage, which is right here, and that's available at www.uncsa.edu/library. That was a bit of a change last year, but it won't change again. I can tell you that what will change, and I think will help with some of you that may be having online renewal issues or any of those problems, we will be shifting our catalog platform on December 15th and also going to a new search environment. So you'll find things to become increasingly streamlined over about the next 6 months. So hold on for that. That's a whole different piece. So when I get to the website, I need to go to what we call the A to Z list. And the A to Z list is that listing of all of our databases. So I can do that simply by coming here and clicking on databases. And you'll see that that takes me to the A to Z databases list. When I get here, it tells me that we have 216 databases. Some of this is a bit of a misnomer because we do have these large package deals. So for instance, we have a really large deal with Alexander Street Press. And so sometimes we break out those databases according to what the subject is, but it's really just sort of a super big package. When we get here, there's a few ways that we can navigate. The most popular ones that we feel are popular by usage that we've seen are over here to the right-hand side. So a lot of folks come here to go straight to JSTOR, and that's great. Credo is one that is a really good basic undergrad research database. It's essentially about 1,000 ebooks. And so one searches into 1,000 ebooks at once. It's very visual. Students love it. I really recommend if you're getting your students started on a research topic, again, it's very basic, but it's the academic version of Wikipedia. So it's a great place for them to come in and get started. So over here at the top, we do have these pull downs. So we have everything organized by subject. And when I say subject, you'll see that we do map our subjects. Some of it is subject, but much of it is mapped to your schools. So for instance, filmmaking has 11 databases. For art, for the visual arts program, we have 12. Design and production has 38, and that's just because they are so diverse. Music has quite a few at 28, and then we have drama at 27 and dance at 10. So when you click on any of these, it's going to take you to your subject area. So let's just do film so we can keep it brief. When you come here, you see the listing of the different databases that's available within your school or subject area. You'll see a brief description to those. You'll see your liaison for the school to the right-hand side, so you can immediately contact whoever you might have questions around. And then you also have links that say share. So if you wanted to, you could come up here and just simply grab the link to that database. So if you wanted to have your students go in and do research, if you said, hey, I really need you to go into the AFI catalog and look for certain producers or something like that, you could actually just grab this and then put this right onto your Canvas page. Notice, you remember we were talking about that proxy link, and it does have that already embedded here. So it has the login.proxy123@nclive.org. So you're ready to go. This link is great. You can throw this right onto your Canvas page and give your students an assignment. From there, we also, going back to everything, not only do we have subjects, but we have types. So we find, of course, one of our big pushes on campus is for streaming content. We know that that is more and more desired in the classroom, and we have an awful lot of it. We have commercial films and documentaries for School of Filmmaking. DLA uses these pretty heavily, but we find an awful lot of documentary content and filmed performance is used throughout campus. So when you come here, if you are interested in streaming, you can go straight there, and you have 25 different databases to see, to sort of discover and see what's available. You'll see that that open access is there. So we do tell you if one of our databases that we've placed on the page is at a certain, again, we only put a few out there, but we feel these highly pertain to what you're doing. Those pieces that come from NC Live are here, but again, you can go back and go down through the different types of content. So if you just wanted to search for ebooks, you could do that here as well. And then we also have vendors. So, many folks know these databases by their vendors, and when you come here, you'll be able to select those. So Alexander Street, again, is very, very popular, and if we click here, we'll see everything that's available by Alexander Street, all of the different areas. So we often find this. We see, we get emails from faculty saying, hey, I really need to get back into Asian American drama. Well, here's your link. Right? You can just grab that link and jump right in. Or of course, you can just click the link. So that is our A to Z list. I'm going to go back out to my PowerPoint so I can stay on track. I'm trying to keep everything within a short amount of time, so we have plenty of time for questions. So I'm going to go back. There we go. All right. So we are going to go, and I guess I should have done this first, sorry. We are going to jump back over and look at two specific databases. Now, I'm not doing a training on JSTOR or Academic Video Online today, so if you have questions that are specific to those databases, again, feel free to circle with me. But I wanted to pick two that were very different. So JSTOR is very text-based, as we know. This is a large database that encompasses lots and lots of scholarly journals and ebooks. Academic Video Online is a platform that provides us streaming video, mainly documentary, but it also has a lot of really great value-added pieces for teaching. So we're going to take a look at both of those today, and we can talk a little bit as well about accessibility in the context of those. So my apologies, I'll jump back out. I'm going to forward to the next slide, so we'll be ready to go when we come back. All right, so back in our A to Z list, we're going to look first at JSTOR, and we know that it's sitting right there waiting for us. So we'll just jump right in. And we see that it asks me to go down the yellow brick road, so I simply click here. Now, the nice thing is that it typically remembers you for a while. So once you've logged into this through the proxy, it will, within a research session, and if you click on that update password, it holds on to it. I feel like it holds on to that login for weeks. So typically, like I rarely have to log in, to be quite honest. I'm going to search for today. I saw an obituary earlier today that made me a little sad for Sally Baines, who was a dance history expert, and her area was East Village, 50s, 60s performance. And so, and I really loved her writing when I was in graduate school. So I thought we're gonna search for Sally Baines today. You'll notice that I put a quote around her name, and that pulls the two terms together so that we're not searching for Sally and Baines, we're searching for Sally Baines. When we come here, we have 604 search results. Now, one of the things that happens often in JSTOR that we see quite a bit is book reviews. So your search results can get a bit muddied by that. You might want to use advanced search, but I'm just going to go down here and grab an article that I know is down the page a bit. Let's see. So let's look at this article here of hers that appeared in TDR in the, I guess in 1990. So if I click on the link, there we go. It opens up the article for me so that I can just start reading. We have the digitized article sitting right in front of us, and we can start, moving through and reading. Now, again, I find JSTOR to be one of the simpler platforms that we have. It is text-based, and they don't add a ton of bells and whistles. What they do provide is really, really strong indexing. So things like OCR searching and that sort of thing are there. So once we get here, there are a few ways we might redirect our students to this article. We can, of course, continue to read online. For ourselves, we can actually download the PDF. So if you're like me and you still really like paper, if I'm truly reading something, it's really awful. I oftentimes print, because I want to be able to write and underline and do all those things. And I've never gotten there digitally. Hopefully I will at some point. So anyhow, you could click on download PDF and then you could hit print. Or if you wanted to save a digital PDF and place it in a reader, you could do that as well. If you want to come back to this or make this available to your students, if we come over here to the left-hand side, and it's very small, but at the bottom, we actually do see a static link. So that you'll see has, let me grab that link. I'm going to go up here and open another tab. Here we go. I'm going to drop it in so you can see how it happens. Brings us right back to the same article. So the nice thing here is that this already has the proxy embedded. It has that proxy 123. So you could take this link and place this right on your Canvas page. If this was an article that you really needed your students to read, you could place that there. When they click, they'll authenticate as a campus user, and then they'll drive right into it too. And again, because they are authenticating so much, they likely won't have to answer any, add any passwords or anything. They'll likely go right to the article. Then they can make the choice if they want to print or if they want to read it digitally. Another piece that you'll find on any of these databases is that they come loaded with citations. So you see the little button for Cite This Item. When you click here, it gives you the citation that is fully formatted. Boy, I would have loved this in grad school. I was that person that was typing these out at 3 in the morning. I hated it. So you can just simply come here and copy this. And then if you have a bibliography you're working on, you can place it there. But again, if you also just want to have nicely formatted citations on your Canvas page, you can grab that content and place it there. You can also direct your students to grab citations from these places. So we know that we're mainly working, these really are the three citation formats that we pretty much all work with, on campus. I typically send students to MLA. But it's just one more little value added tool that JSTOR provides. But these are typical of any of these text-based databases. So if you're looking at ebooks, if you're looking at articles in other databases, EBSCO, those places, you're still going to have tools like citation developers and those permanent links. Again, it's really important to use permanent links, both from a copyright perspective, but also if you were to go up to your URL bar, this happens, I see this often with faculty, where they think they have found the article they want in JSTOR, they go up to the top and they grab the URL, and then they put that into Canvas. That will not work for your students. You really have to have that permanent link. Let's see, she will recording for review. Yes, I am recording this. So you can circle back around, no problem. All right, so that was JSTOR. Let's take a look at a very different database. We're going to look at that Academic Video Online, as I promised. Academic Video Online is sort of a documentary streaming service that's available. What? No, don't do this to me. Okay, let's see. Hopefully I can get in and search for something and make it work. So, and this is just to say too that remember that we all have technology problems. So never get frustrated. I deal with these databases all day long and oftentimes feel like I'm jumping through hoops. So I'm here to help you. Don't get frustrated and don't walk away because you get a crazy message like that. So I'm going to search for today institutional racism. That's a big topic right now, right? And here we go. So this is a really interesting database in that it actually has an awful lot of not only documentary, but news video. And the interesting thing here is that it can give you snapshot views from what people were thinking about 20 years ago. Can blacks win in sports, for instance? It's a very interesting topic. But he also has one further down that I wanted to take a look at, if I can find it again. Of course, I'm not finding it again. Tony Brown productions, I find, are really interesting. And here we go. This is the one I was looking for. So 1978, is unconscious racism a killer? So when I click here, I open up the video and it will immediately start playing. And again, I apologize for these little errors that are popping up. I'm not really sure what the problem is here today. But when I come here, I can, start to play the video. I can make that full screen. I can do any of the things that we typically do within a streaming service. But I can also come to the top where I see that not only do I have the ability to look at it full screen, I can look at a transcript. So before I came to UNCSA, I was in community colleges, and we saw for folks that had need to learn in a more multimodal way, not only watch and listen, but perhaps read at the same time. These kinds of transcriptions are incredibly helpful. And for students, they can also come in here and use this content for papers and for other kinds of content. So that's why I think this and then Films on Demand both offer this. These are fantastic ways and entry points for students. We know that they are, very device driven. Students can use their phones, they can listen. And for our students who are so busy and have such compact schedules, I think having lots to listen to is a good way to allow them into different research paths. So this is a very interesting video. They could come in here and actually search the transcript. So if they had search terms, they could look for certain types of subjects. But it allows one to dig a little bit deeper into all of this. If we need to share it, we simply click at the top where we have share, and you'll see that this box that says copy permalink below has popped up. And again, we see that the login.proxy123 is there for us. So if we click on this box to copy the permalink, we can then go back into Canvas, do a Control V, and that's going to drop the right link right onto our Canvas page. We have set up Alexander Street to embed, but I have not got it exactly where I want it to be yet. So hopefully by fall, we'll be able to actually embed these videos into Canvas. But for now, I'm suggesting that people just simply put the permalink. So again, students are driven back to this page. As well, if you or students are using this and you need to cite this in a research capacity, the cite button at the top gives you the full citation that also includes that permalink. So that's another place that you can come to do that. And John is asking if NPR has the transcript feature that that faculty can use. There is some NPR content both on this platform and on Films on Demand, and so anything that sits on those platforms does have the transcripts. I'm not sure about NPR's website though, so that would be a good one to dig in on. Let's see, it has to be on a page or not just as a link. I put links into modules. So what I typically do is if I have, certainly you can put it on pages, but if you have a, like e-reserves, for instance, like if you have, 10 films or 20 audio files that you want them to listen to over the course of a semester, I'll build a module that says resources or e-resources or something like that, and I'll place all of the links within that. So that's typically how I deal with it. Wanda may have better suggestions on that though. All right, so let me go back out now because I want to wrap things up so that I leave plenty of time for questions. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. So how do we maintain these databases? Some of these are quite expensive. Some of them are as low as $1,000 a year. Some are as high as $40,000 a year. So that's on my high end for databases. There's the one big one that we've talked about today. That's about how much I spend. The library, has a very low budget in terms of materials. And so it is very challenging to make all of us. Sometimes I feel like it's puzzle pieces to get as much as I can for the money I have. And I do wheel and deal. So that's the other thing I do with vendors is I wheel and deal a bit to get the prices down here and there. So high cost but low use databases really I put my eyeball on those. We have a few right now that are, one that has just gone up to $6,000, and yet we have months and months and months with 0 users. So those are the kinds of spaces that make me consider whether we need to keep that database or not. And we do currently have a few that we are looking at that could wind up on the chopping block due to that. So if you have databases you love, you need to use them because you may lose them if they're not being used on a regular basis. And when I say regular basis, I don't include the summer. I realize that we do not have a ton going on during the summer, so that's a different thing. There are also databases out there that take content down. So they may lose licenses with the content providers or other pieces. So that is just something to remember. And we are constantly considering databases as well for addition. We turned on as many as we possibly could during the COVID-19 crisis, and we were offered many free databases. So we were able to extend access to several up through June, and JSTOR has recently made its content available through December. So while we had a small JSTOR subscription, it is much larger right now. So you have access to a lot more content and also ebooks through December 31st. But that said, I do want to warn you, make sure that in January, when you go back in, if you're reusing any class content from this semester or from spring, that you check your links. And that's just a good, if you're using library content, it's a good sort of course to go through and to work through is to just check those links every time you replicate a course. Don't make the assumption that the content's still there. If there is something that's a core piece that you really need or you really want your students looking at and suddenly it's gone and no longer accessible, please let me know or let the library know. We can get that for you through interlibrary loan and other resources. So we have a few more resources to help. I just want to show you real quickly before we go into Q&A so that you have some other things to look at. Mainly we have library subject pages on our website to really help you again ascertain what the best databases are for you. And we also have our remote access guide that has the easy proxy generator. So if you need to put the proxy link on, you can do it really easily. But again, you can also email me and I can do it for you in 10 seconds. So it's no big deal. So let's go back to that screen share. Here we go. And we are going to go back to our website. Library. So I always start on the homepage of the library, but for subject guides, we have the link up here at the top. So it says subject and topic guides. We have built out quite a few. So you'll see, and actually I have to give my colleague Kim Henze credit for this. She really, really built out these guides. You can see she's done 13 just for D&P. She's got 3 for drama. But the rest of us are in there working on these pieces as well, and we have quite a few guides that are available at this point. So these are great places for you to come, and depending on what your area is, and I'll just again click on D&P because we have have so many, we can go in and dig right in. Let's look at wig and makeup, for instance, and determine what resources really fit your area. So, you know, she's really done a great job of digging in on this. School of Music, I'm coming for you next. I'm going to do this for you, for all of your studios. We have lots of different kinds of content that's available here, everything from images to video. And it's just a really great place for you to get started as a faculty member. It's also a great place for students to start their research. So if we have students that are working in particular areas, this can be a place that they can come to get familiar with what the databases are in their different areas. We do have one here for higher education that we're working on building out over the summer as well, but we'll be placing journals. We do have a site-wide license to the Chronicle of Higher Ed, so we'll be placing those kinds of resources here for faculty as well, because it's really important for you to have professional literature available to you. Let's see, so, and I should have pointed out another piece over time that is a real emphasis, or something we'll really be emphasizing, is creating production guides. So we had this for the Odyssey, but particularly where we have productions that link so closely to, or that, you know, are derived from literature. These are really rich areas for us to be able to come in and do a little bit of research on and provide content to students that may be coming to this from you know, either a writing class or a history class, or be involved in the production itself. And if we can make scripts accessible via ebooks, we do that and also place them here. So I'm sorry we didn't get to do this, launch this very well this spring, but we'll be back there at some point in the future. All right, so let me go back. The last page I want to show you today, and then again, we'll go back into our questions, is the remote access page. So go up here, UNCSA, remote access. We started this page, the remote access page, in the spring when, again, things started going bad, but we're continuing to add to it. So today we'll actually be adding a tab that says library training to the left-hand side, and that's where you'll find the link for this webinar and subsequent webinars. As well, you'll find that there's information on our you know, electronic resources for research and instruction. So again, links to all of your research guides and many more. We also have this here now. We are just now opening up what we call, we've been doing it a bit by bit, but we're calling this curbside pickup. So the library's reopening plan is to fully reopen to faculty and staff on around August 1st, so that you can just come in the door. But we realize that starting now and going through the summer, you will need materials. So anything that we can get for you or pull for you, we can do that. We can check it out to your account, and then we can meet you at the front door. So we do this in a socially distanced way that's safe for us and for you, but we are making that available. And if you need digitization of materials, so chapters, parts of books, scores, articles, any of those pieces, we are also able to do that for you and submit it as a PDF. So these are both services that will remain through the school year. It's not just a now time. So some of you may not want to come into the library building during this time. That's fine. We're happy to meet you at the curb. So just let us know. And that's not, I'm not trying to be funny, but we will meet you at the curb. So we have links here about how we link well to Canvas, as well as some of our own you know, links to online teaching, community-made resources for online teaching you may find. And then we also created our own research tutorials. So I really want to emphasize this. So for instance, using Discovery, these are very quick tutorials, but they're really well produced. This can really help you search for content within the library catalog, navigating the A to Z list like we went over today, and then again, looking at those subject resources. So again, lots of good review content for you. So let's go. I think one last piece is we do have information on the stigma. This, of course, came out in the spring that happened around coronavirus. So we want to continue to expand this list. All right, so I'm going back out to my slideshow so we can finish up. Sorry for all the jumping back and forth today, but it was the easiest way to do it. So do we have any questions? You're welcome to turn your mic back on and do it live, or you can type in a question.
I think there were some questions on chat, maybe?
Yeah, I tried to answer them as we went, and I think I did. Does anybody, let's see, it looks like Clifton, he said, I linked this to my students and it used to work, but now it throws an error. Yeah, I think if Clifton, I'll take a look at that later and send you an email. I need to dig
Yeah,
in on that.
it was with all the EBSCO links, actually. It wasn't
Okay.
just that one, but all the EBSCO now give me an error page on EBSCO.
Huh. Okay, let's definitely dig in on that and see what's going on.
Okay,
But
awesome.
I'm gonna save this file so that I have the link, and then
Great.
I will let you know what I find out.
So I have some questions as long as I have the floor for a second.
You have the floor.
Does Discovery allow for, so in the olden days, New York Public Library had a great resource called the Picture Library, Picture Collection.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you could search subject matter, and then there would be a file of clippings that a librarian had put together.
Yeah.
And I would love some way to replicate that.
Mm-hmm.
And it would mean taking all of the databases that hold content, visual content, and kind of coding them by subject matter. And I was wondering if something like that already existed that I don't know about.
There's a little bit of that kind of work going on in art libraries, because typically we saw those kinds of files in art libraries, right? Like I used them at Museum of Modern Art. They were incredible.
Yes, exactly.
For doing, because again, going back to Sally Baines, I was doing a lot of research on alternate art spaces in the East Village in the 50s. And so I sat at MoMA and just went through them. There has been some work done in that area, and it just depends on the institution and whether it's been placed in sort of an open capacity. So I would say that probably places like DPLA will have some of that content.
Mm-hmm.
I'll dig in a little bit more through the Art Library Society and see where they're at. They were working on, pooled resources for those kinds of environments and collections as well. So I'll dig in because it's an interesting topic. Some of that content, there is content like that, broadsides and that sort of thing in Alexander Street. It's also in Art Store. It's in other databases, but unfortunately those databases don't talk to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens now is this, when I send the students out on a research project, they just default to Googling it.
Right.
And it makes me so sad because we have access to so much better material. But
I think, if it's an open access in a good capacity, it's open to Google. So they're coming to it anyway, but it's more about teaching our students where to go for authentic information. And making sure that they understand that they should be using sources from New York Public Library versus somebody's blog, right? And so that's something that, I would just say as an instructor that, you tell students you've got to have verified sources. Because we all know images are easily edited and augmented.
Sure.
Online.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. In the spring, you scanned several books for me, which was fantastic to get through the spring. What's the copyright issue now going forward? And I think you may have answered this saying that now you're allowed to scan things that you own as, so what's the policy going forward?
So, it's kind of a scary time for copyright, because I think in the spring it was sort of like, oh, just get it online, right? And we jumped in and we scanned. I will license it as an ebook if I can. So that is always my first place. If you all come to me and say, I really need this book online, we go out and we try to license it, but we have to be able to license the ebook as an unlimited user licensed ebook. Because otherwise, if we only license 1 or 2 copies, it doesn't do the students any good and they don't have access to it. So what I would say is just simply to sort of keep on what you're doing. Pick the books that are really meaningful and that need to be, you know, the core pieces of your classes, and then we'll deal with it book by book, and we'll see. Some instructors have come to me and said, oh, actually, I'll only need 3 chapters. So we scan the 3 chapters and we put those up. Some instructors have come to me and said, you know, no, I must have this, but the students aren't going to read it a ton. So one user at a time is probably an okay license, and we've done that. So there's just, it just varies from book to book. There's some publishers that would sue us in a heartbeat. There are some that wouldn't, and I kind of know who those are. So,
Cool.
so yeah, we'll just take it. We're a small enough institution, we can take it book by book.
Great. And then I just had one more question that I wrote down, and sorry to everyone else who, can you tell us how to get to periodicals like Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal? And I think we have access to those things, but I don't really know how to get to them.
Right. So again, we just simply come to our A to Z list. So let's go back. Going back to our main website, we're clicking on our databases. And one of our database types is actually newspaper articles. So when we go here, we'll see that there's the Chronicle. So that's your link to get to the Chronicle of Higher Ed. And then we have a couple of different resources available, and I can't remember what sits on what, but this InfoTrack newsstand and ProQuest Central hold New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and all of that content. Now it's different. You would have, you know, the content that you need, you know, like today's content from New York Times is there, but it's broken down article by article. So it's not like you're going to the consumer version, the website version of the New York Times. So it's a little different, but the content is there. Unfortunately, site-wide licenses for those consumer versions, if they're available, are quite expensive. Does that help?
Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Okay, Janine had a question. She says, how do we know if there are databases for resources that we are looking for? I'm interested in musical theater and popular music for people of color, but don't know where to begin. So again, I would go to our subject guides. So you can dig in a little bit on the music subject guide just to see what databases are out there. You can certainly come here and click, let's go back out. There we go. And come in for music and see what might, you know, you might be interested in looking in. One thing I always suggest is when you have these kinds of topics, these bigger topics, once you start moving around and searching a bit, keep a running punch list of what you think are good search terms. So for instance, if you have certain musicians that you're looking for, or certain terminologies, certain areas, you know, Harlem Renaissance is, you know, is one. Keep a running punch list of those search terms, and as you move through different databases, you can certainly, you know, keep sort of using the same subject terminologies over and over again. So that can be helpful. And you might come upon, so for instance here, you know, if we were in the Garland Encyclopedia or a resource like that, that's more encyclopedic, that's going to give you a lot more of that content as well, you know, right off the bat. But there are some resources. So the Alexander Street Press certainly does cover, it's not in here. Let's see, let me go back up. It certainly does cover a lot more in terms of diversity. So African American Music Reference is right here under Alexander Street, Asian American drama, Black drama. So these are all places that you might really want to dig in on for that topic. But you're also welcome, again, to make an appointment with myself or Kim Henze, and we can do a one-on-one research tutorial with you and get you up and running for that.
Thanks very much.
Oh, no problem. All right, any other questions? We're at 12:01. Is everybody ready for lunch? All right. Well, again, you know who I am and you know where I am. So please reach back out to me if I can be of any help at all. We have more webinars coming up. The library will be doing these every Monday, and these are just the next 4 that we have in the can and ready to go. But we intend to use these experiences with you all to develop new topics. So we're going to keep going. We're going to keep doing webinars as long as we have interest. And again, we'll keep recording them and we'll keep placing them on our website for folks to come back to. So coming up next, Patrick, who is the liaison to School of Filmmaking, will be talking about our streaming resources. So he'll definitely be diving in on places like Swank, Canopy, and then some of those academic video online and a few of those others. So we'll see you here hopefully next week at 2 o'clock.
This was great. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thanks for coming in. Good to see all of your faces. I miss all of you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.